Did you guys hear that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So, hey, welcome to another episode of Shiftless. A very special episode by the suggestion of Chef Brad Green. Tell you what, Brad, if you would remind us what the suggestion was, and then I'll introduce our guest, if that's okay with you.
I wanted to talk to somebody that we knew personally that had done Tour Divide. Because I have, other questions, that haven't been answered in previous interviews by Tour Divide people. We'll get into them, but...
We definitely will get into them, and I'm glad we have Brad here to ask the smarter questions. This one's not, be honest with you, Tour Divide's not up my personal alley, but we'll definitely talk about it a good bit. I am definitely fascinated by the ride, the routes, and most particularly the riders, and I'm extremely excited to bring on board our good friend, Mr. Tim Nipper, Tour Divide veteran, great guy, and just a huge fan of basic country music from way back when.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
I had totally forgotten about his obsession with double bass drums.
Yes. Yeah. The opposite of country music. Yeah.
All right, let's make a point now to go easy on the inside jokes, because people listening probably will be like, what the hell are they talking about? Just to reframe really quickly, and then I'm going to actually turn it over to Brad and let him kick this off. But what is your preferred musical genre, Mr. Nipper?
All things metal, I guess. It varies, but a lot of the older stuff, but then I like the new progressive crazy stuff. I could talk about it forever, but yeah, stuff that scares people.
Yeah. Do you listen while you ride, or
no.
is it more? Okay.
No music while I ride. I've tried it, can't do it. I'd rather hear my bike and nature and the trucks coming at me from behind and all that good stuff.
I am exactly the same way. Now, I'm not going to knock anyone that likes to listen to music or podcasts or whatever while they're riding. Everybody do your own thing. That's really cool. But I just can't do it. It completely distracts me. So I need my ears to help me out. But that's enough for me. Hey, Brad, you're the Tour Divide curious person here. Why don't you roll with a question or two and get this thing going in the right direction before I completely sidetrack us?
Oh, I don't think you can sidetrack us too bad. Not worse than I can. Well, first of all, I want to know more about Arkansas. What put Arkansas high country on your map?
I think it was just looking for new things. I like new routes, exploring new stuff. Been to Arkansas a bunch over the years, but I haven't done that route.
It's beautiful.
Was just looking for something in the 1,000-ish mile, get it done in a week and hopefully not be too destroyed at the end type of thing. And it just looked like it's really well put on, well supported. So
yeah, and it's a great route. I've only done the north part of it, but thoroughly enjoyed it, especially the part around Oark and birds and all that stuff. It's so cool. I'm sure you'll love it, and you'll go kill it. I mean, it's nothing compared to the stuff you ride on a normal basis. So I mean, I have a bunch of questions about Tour Divide. Like, how much studying did you do? I know you had notes upon notes upon notes, and you did race across Texas beforehand, correct?
Right. Did 3 instances of it before? 4 instances of it, yeah. No, 3. Can't keep track anymore. Too many of them. So did the inaugural year, did the mini. We froze, but it went okay. But that was actually my first bikepacking trip. And then I think, I got to the end in 15, and then had a pretty good blow up in 16, and I can't remember which of the times it was. I passed out. I've passed out a few times on Rat. But yeah, there was definitely a build up to, okay, I like this bikepacking stuff, to, all right, we're going to go do something serious. But I built up. I did rat, did Grand Gravel, and there were a couple others. So, a couple days here, then you go a week, work up to it type of thing.
Yeah.
Just real quick, were you aware of the Tour Divide, and that was a goal kind of from the start from all of that build up, or is that something you were doing the bike packing and doing some of those trips and became aware of the Tour Divide after?
I was aware of it from the movie, like most people at that point, mid-20 teens. So that's what I think made me decide to go try rat. Decided I liked that, and then it kind of got more serious from there. So it was a build-up, but I wanted to make sure. I wanted to do short rat first. I didn't even jump into the full one because I wanted to see if I even liked it.
Thanks for stealing my questions, Kevin.
But I would say that's very important. You see a lot of people that go straight for the big stuff. They go straight for tour or for use all the acronyms, TAT or TABOR, or any of the cross-country things, the multi-week things. You really need to make sure that you like doing that stuff and that you are okay being alone and the gear and we can get on all that stuff. But start small and work up to the 3 week rides.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. Is I was going to back you up and say you mentioned that was your very first bike packing trip. Do you remember like major mistakes that you made, like stuff that you packed that was just completely unnecessary, or stuff that you forgot to pack?
I don't remember anything I forgot to pack. I remember I had way too much stuff. I was using a rack and panniers, which was a terrible idea because the bike wasn't balanced very well. But I just had a ton of stuff, and it was just way too heavy. We froze that year. It was below freezing. Hadn't planned for that. Didn't pay attention to the weather properly. So it was learning experience all around. Yeah.
They say you pack for your fears.
Yes.
I think a lot of new people pack because they have a lot of fears just because of the unknown.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So, I had 5 sets of everything, and it was just way too much stuff. So
except for warm clothes, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and then that's part of it. You pack too much warm stuff, and then you overheat and you sweat out, and so it's You kind of have to just learn. You definitely learn from your failures, and that's why it's good to start small and figure out what works, what doesn't work, and just gain that experience. I still do every time I go. I inventory what I took, so it's a big process of laying everything out. What you're going to take, but when you get back, how many of these things that I carry for 5 days or, however many hundreds of miles that I never even touched, never looked at? Do I really need those things? Did I need that third shirt? Do I really need 3 pairs of bibs, all those things? And you start whittling it down, and then you get to where this is all I really need. And some of the stuff, repair kit, tools, med kit, you may never have used those things, but you need them. But
you're happy you did.
The other stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it depends. Are you racing, or are you out there just having fun and riding and rolling heavy? Then you take everything, right? So.
I mean, I've carried stuff on multiple day rides before that I literally forgot I even had. It's not that I didn't need them or want them, or it's just didn't even cross my mind the whole trip. So, have you done any CRT or CTR, Colorado Trail, or AZT?
They're both on my list. Yeah, they're both definitely on my list. We've been spending a lot of time up in the Leadville area, right on the race routes. I've ridden sections from there both directions of the Colorado Trail, but I haven't spent any overnights or any significant time on it. Plan to do something either with you all or on my own this summer. We'll see how things shake out. But Colorado Trail is definitely on the list. And then I've done big chunks of the Arizona Trail on the northern end for some other events. I I like the northern end. The southern end is a little concerning to me because I have trouble with heat. So we just have to see.
I know you do.
But yeah, definitely both of those are on the to-do list. We'll see when they actually happen. Yeah.
I saw. I was been going down the rabbit hole of gear and bike bags and stuff that was released at Sea Otter, and there's a company that makes I forgot what it's called, RES strap or something like that. And it goes on the top tube of your bike, and you unzip it, and it's bike pack straps that come out that attach to, I think, your chainstay and your down tube, and so you can put your bike on your back. And they said that they specifically designed it for the portion of Arizona Trail where you have to go through the Grand Canyon and your tires aren't allowed to touch.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, a lot of people will use. I can't remember the name, but it's an Osprey pack. They'll kind of take some parts off that and use the frame. And you want something with a frame just because it distributes the load a little bit better if you're lugging a 50-pound bike. But yeah, you've got to take that thing apart, wheels off, the whole deal, and hike that. We've done some significant hike a bike. We went up Elbert last season with our bikes, carrying. And I ended up just carrying it on my shoulders, but one of the other guys was attaching it to a pack, and it worked sort of okay. So really depends on what you do. There's other ones out there that have like a pole that come out of your pack, and you can hang your bike on it and stuff like that.
That seems precarious. I'd have to see that. But that's a whole nother element to the race that just you have to be ready for. That seems crazy to me.
Yeah, both of Arizona Trail and Colorado Trail have significant hiking. Colorado, depending on conditions, and how strong you are, you're going to be walking half of it maybe. And in Arizona, you've definitely got the canyon to deal with. And on tour, there were some definite hike-a-bike areas there, but not anything like that. It's
mostly towards the beginning, huh?
Yeah, there's some pretty steep stuff there. Getting up the wall, it's just basically dragging your bike straight up on a little narrow trail. And that was more upper body strength than just getting your 50-pound bike up and over down trees and stuff like that.
Well, real quickly, let me just step in here for a second. So, for Tracy in Wisconsin, Tour Divide at the start. What is the start? What is the finish? How long is it? For people that aren't aware of the Tour Divide, Tim, can you kind of walk us through the generalities of what that actually is?
Sure. So
you're stepping all on my questions.
The high level of it is goes from Banff up in Canada by Calgary down to the Mexico border at Antelope Wells. Roughly 2,700 miles. It's different every year because of fiery routes and forest closures and things like that. I think the year I did it was 2,740 something. So it happens the grand depart's early June every year. Roughly 150, 200 people line up and go. Fast guys are going to do it in the mid to upper teens. I think the record's 13 and a half days right now. And then mid pack, which is where I was, is low 20s. It's self-supported. Now you see a lot of other races that reference Tour Divide rules, so totally self-supported. It's you and what you can carry and what you can acquire along the way from commercially available sources. So no pre-planning, no getting help from others. You can mail stuff ahead to post offices, but you can't have caches of stuff along the way and things like that. But it's just you out there on your own, following the course and just making your way north to south, or you can go south to north if you want. Some people do that too. It's actually a lot of chunky forest roads, gravel, not a lot of single track. There's a few sections here or there, but it's mostly just big chunk gravel. And then a little bit of pavement here and there, fair amount of pavement as you're connecting things. We are, for the race, you're tracked on track leaders. You have a spot or an inReach or whatever, so they know where everyone's at, and they keep track of where you are, make sure you're not off route or cutting or any of those things. But it's very unofficial, and it's just a thing that is out there that people do. You can do it really anytime you want. There's also the GDMBR, which is the ACA route, which takes a few of the easier options. Things like cocoa claims and stuff like that are not in it. So it hits more towns, and is definitely not race oriented. So you can go do that and tour it and take 3 months, and people do that every year too. So
my first question is, just on a personal note for you, did you find it more challenging mentally or physically?
Every day had its ups and downs, I guess. From the physical standpoint, the elevation didn't really hurt me. I've always done okay up high. You start at around 5,000-ish. I think you top out around 12 in Colorado, and you build up to that, and I really didn't have any trouble with that. But your body wears down as you progress. So I was used to multi-day things, but once you get into it farther, it just wears on you, and you start to wear down, and you start to lose muscle mass, and it got physically difficult towards the end just to keep going, I guess. Part of that was I was out too long. If you were going faster, you're working harder, but you're not putting as much abuse on your body. But then mentally too, I had a lot of trouble the first week because it rained all but one day, and it was just cold and wet and miserable, and I had this idea in my head of it's going to be awesome and sunny and these wide open vistas and everything, and so I really had a hard time until I got a little farther south and I got some of those wide open views, and the weather changed, and then my mood kind of picked up, and I kind of figured out my rhythm. It took me a whole week just to get into what I need to do to progress along the trail efficiently. So both. It was hard. It was just hard. Yeah. Any one day wasn't terrible, and I've done worse single day things. Like my first year at Land Run Mid-South, when it was, you're hiking through the mud for 20 miles. That was worse than any one day on tour. But you add up 3 weeks of those days, and it gets tough.
So you did it in 3 days, or 3 weeks? Is that what you said, Tim?
I ended up at 23 days and some change, like 3 or 4 hours. I don't remember the exact time. I'd have to go look it up. Of course, started out way over ambitious. I'm going to go out there and do it in 18 days, and that quickly became impossible. And so spent a good week clawing back time to get on the tracker. There's little flags of you're going to take these many days, and I was battling the 25-day flag for about a week, and then got ahead of it. But I was out there long enough that I got tired, and I just got to the point where, all right, I just need to finish. And so there were days where I would push and I'd roll through the night, and there were days where I just I got to stop and take a break. I didn't have any 0 days, but I had some short days and I had some long days.
Yeah.
It's at least in my mind, you can't really race it efficiently the first time. You've got to go out there and be in it and know where these things are, and this is a good place to stop. No, I should have pushed farther this day to this next thing, or just you learn the course, and so the next time you go to do it, you can do it more efficiently, you can do it more quickly, you know what's coming, you know, okay, this shop's got good stuff, this shop, you know, it's closed, you know, all these different things, which is part of route research in general. But when I got done, I said, I'm never doing that again. And then I think within an hour in the car, I was already talking about, well, I could take off half a day if I would have just done this, and I could save a day if I would have not stopped here and screwed around doing these things. And so
I remember when you were fresh off of it, we talked about some of that stuff.
yeah,
I remember you bouncing stuff like that around, like within a week of you finish, and I was like, are you going to go back and do it again? And you're like, hell no. And then you, like, almost in the same breath, you're like, but I could do it a lot faster if I went back. I still remember that.
right. Yeah, and I can think of it two ways. I'd like to go and tour it and take a month and just have fun and not be dead every day and just see all the cool stuff. But then I'd also like to go and do it as fast as possible. And I, you know, do I have time to train for the fastest possible, or do I have time to take off a month? So, you know, it's both. Eventually I'll go do it.
Welcome to reality.
I was lining things up to do it again in 20. Obviously things went sideways there. Tried to shift it to 21, still didn't work. And so now I'm kind of trying to build back up to it again.
You touched on when you took off, you had 18 days in your head. The preliminary schedule that people have in their heads has definitely been a huge hurdle in rat participants. People get it in their head, I'm going to do it in 6 days, 5 days, 7 days, whatever. And just like you said, early in the process, you realize that that wasn't going to be a realistic goal this time. Shifting away from that 18-day plan, was that a big hurdle for you, or were you just prepared that, well, if I don't meet that, I can just roll into whatever, or was that one of those mental things that you had to overcome?
I had to overcome it, and I really shifted from, I had, you know, planned out the first 4 or 5 days. This is where I need to get to here. I need to get to Fernie the first day. I need to do this. And after I messed up the first 2 days, I'm like, all right, this is not working. I need to figure out a better way to plan to this. So I really got into each day, or that evening, I kind of had in my mind, all right, I'm here on the course. It's this many miles to the next thing. So I would set goals A, B, and C. You know, I've got to get at least this far today to consider it good progress. And it was a reasonable goal. So, you know, and you know, we've got to get to this 10 and get some you know, refresh of supplies. And then option B was, okay, it'd be really cool if I could get this far. That's better camping. And then option C would be, it would be totally awesome if I could get this much farther and, you know, make some really good progress. And so every day was, okay, I'm, you know, going to rest for a while. When I get up, I need to get to this next point. And so it was really just riding from point to point every day is what I got to. I wasn't doing the whole course. I was just, that day I was going to Whitefish. The next day, you know, next thing down the line. It really had to just change and take it in little bites. Yeah.
I think that's a good way to be, because if you have all your points mapped out for the entire thing on any multi-day, I mean, you could screw everything up the first day and be chasing your tail the entire time. You know, when we've set multi-day routes before, we've made a contingency for every day, and that becomes a lot of planning too, because you're like, okay, if we don't make it here on the first day, we can make it to here, and then that sets us up to where we've got to make it to here the next day, and if we don't make it to there, we can at least make it to here. And then you're doing all these, you know, contingencies for contingencies, and it's like none of this is going to play out the way it is. You just need to, like you said, assess it day by day. Okay, we're here. We can at least make it to here. It'd be better if we made it to here. You know, I totally understand what you're saying. I probably didn't say it as well as you did, but
I know. Yeah. A short course is different than a long course. You know, a short course, a couple days. it's a little bit different, and you know how it's just you can get through it quicker. But if you're gonna be out there for a week or longer, you've got things to stretch out. Of course, if you've got to catch a flight or you've got a hard deadline, that makes it a little bit more difficult. But something open-ended
Yeah, for sure.
like tour, I had allowed for 2 weeks of extra time on the end in case things went really bad, and so I was going to go till I finished basically. So I just
Smart move.
one by one, and I do that now too. Like I've got Pinions and Pines coming up here in a couple weeks, and I know I'm not going to be super fast, and so I've tacked on a couple more days at the end. So if I go really quick, 4 days. If I'm slow, 6 days, right? And so you got to give yourself that time for these races. For if you're just going out and having fun, it's a different story. But I've definitely gone out way too fast. Rat's the perfect example. I've blown up twice on that, and that was just over ambitious. And I've got to get to this spot, and I've got to go for the record, and I've got to hit. I'm going to do it in 5 days and all this stuff, right? And you go out and you just completely blow up, and then things go sideways, and you black out, and you're laying in the mud and all that fun stuff. So yeah.
I've known in addition to you, I personally know 2 other people that have done the exact same thing. Just gone out and cranked out like 220 miles the very first day, and just because they felt great, and then it's all kind of downhill after that. So you went to Tour Divide with the ambition of doing 150 miles a day on average. What was your long day and your short day?
Short day, I know for sure that was 60-something miles. That was Holland Lake to Ovando. Cold, rainy, miserable day. Made the massive mistake of backtracking. I was with a guy that was in worse mental shape than I was. He convinced me to backtrack to Sealy because there was a bar and food. And did that, wasted half a day, got to Vondo and was cold, wet, frozen, wrecked, and just stayed there. Felt better the next day. I'd met up with Kevin Campagna, and we rode together the whole next day, and it was a nice day the next day, right? But that day was the shortest day. Longest day I think was 180-ish. Broke that up into a couple. That was down in the Gila in New Mexico. Once it got really hot, I started just basically rolling until I got tired. I'd sleep in the middle of the day when it was hot and some shade, and then roll through the night. And so it was just roll till you need to sleep, stop, sleep a few hours, go again. But yeah, overall, I think I averaged over 100 per day, but it was all over the place.
Did you did you dirtbag at camp every night, or did you catch some cabins or motels along the way, or anything?
It was about
like
50-50. First couple nights, we're just sleeping on the side of the trail. I think I got a room in Whitefish because I needed to wait for the bike shop for something. But really, it just depended on where I was, if the timing was good to grab a room. But then again, that's something efficiency-wise. If I truly was pushing and racing, I would not have gotten probably 2/3 of the rooms that I did, right? Because it just kills time, and you're in there way too long. But then there's some places, there's mandatory stops, right? Like Brush Mountain, I'll stop there every time. I've been through there 3 times, a couple times on other events, but the vortex there is real, and you stop, and it's awesome, and the rooms are great, and the food's great, and the company's great, and so you stop and hang out. I mean, I know the super fast guys blow right through, but I'll always stop there. Yeah, there are a couple days where I would you get to town, and it's early evening, and you could keep going way longer, but you're just like, no, I need to rest for a bit and take a shower and eat some actual food, not gas station junk. It really depended on my mood and weather and everything. But sleep system was, I had a tent, not a bivy, so the tent helped on the rainy days. You could get in that and not be trapped in a bivy sack. So tent slows you down a little bit too. And
So you carried both?
for my tent for fast trips, it's the same one. It's a Big Agnes. I want to say it's a Fly Creek Platinum single. So just enough room in there to sit up and change and get cleaned up a little bit, and that's about it. If I want to go quick, then I'll use a bivy. I've got a Sierra Designs bivy that I'll use if I'm just gonna go and lay down for a few hours here and there.
Cannon runs I think he got this move from you, the sleeping bag cover and the sleeping bag liner, and that's basically your bivy.
If it's hot, like Rat can be hot, or Grand Gravels, if it's if it's going to be super warm and you're not going to need a sleeping bag, it's 70 degrees at night. Sol emergency bivy and maybe a liner, if anything. I think I've done a few where it was just a Sol, space blanket bivy, and that's it. But if you're in Texas and it's 80 at night, then you don't really need anything. You can just lay there on the ground.
Yeah, but you still need a barrier from the bugs to some extent.
True. Yeah. Bugs and the snakes and the scorpions. Yep.
So I was telling Kevin that I have ambitions of doing race across Texas, not racing, let's be clear, but doing it from point to point and dirt bagging it every night. Not catching a hotel at all. Do you think that's possible? What are your thoughts on that?
It's possible. You'd have to plan it a little bit. Texas is hard because everything's private property, so you can't safely bandit camp everywhere. I guess if you're careful about it, but you don't have forest all over the place to just lay down wherever you want. But certainly doable.
Yeah. So Tour Divide, basically, you could pretty much lay down anywhere you wanted, huh?
Most of the time, anywhere you're on federal lands, forest, BLM, there's ample opportunity just to lay down. And then along the route, there's also plenty of places where people either have services or you can just camp in their yards. They'll have signs up, GD, MBR, Tour Divide, you can camp here, use our hose, that type of thing.
That's such a cool atmosphere and environment. I just love that people open up their land and offer those kind of services, just to guys that are riding bikes. It's such a...
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes me feel so warm.
Yeah, and there's more things popping up. The Villa Ranch down south of Pytown is relatively new, a few years, I think. We did an out and back from Grants down to there and back a couple years ago. And so there are new little services and businesses popping up along the route for hikers and for bikers. So there's more out there. People will do things like, parks, public parks and post offices and things like that. But you're always running the risk of getting in trouble, getting kicked out, that type of thing. Yeah. So I've slept in parks. I've never tried to sleep in a post office. Forest Service bathrooms are the best. Those are the Hiltons of the trail. You get a good clean one of those. You can go in there and shut the door, and you're safe and you're warm, and it's good stuff.
I had mentioned at the beginning that personally, I'm not. Tour Divide is not on my personal bucket list, and you kind of just touched on one of the reasons why. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm scared to death of the concept of running into a grizzly bear. That's just something that I don't even want to have that be a potential of my day. Anything like that you ran into, or any concerns that you have along those lines from a safety perspective? I
was coming from Texas at the time. I hadn't had any bear encounters yet, and so the grizzly scared me. Of course, everyone has bear spray, but I had the whistle. So if you're going quick downhill, it's tight. You don't want to come around a corner and scare one or run into one. So you're blowing your whistle, all that stuff. People had bells, things like that. So there are a couple parts that were real tight foliage, and it was a little sketchy. I didn't actually see one until between Helena and Butte in Montana, and it was a quarter mile off. Standing in the middle of the road, I yelled, it saw me, and it ran away. And so you just ride a little quicker. The scary
I'd be riding a lot.
the scarier one was the mountain lion. That was on I want to say that was on Union. That was in Wyoming. He was closer, and so I yelled a lot more, and it took off. And then luckily I had a downhill there, and so I was going as quick as I could. Living in bear country now and having the potential to see bears, and they're black bears, not grizzlies, but having the potential to see bears and having seen them on just my after work rides, it's a little different now, a little more comfortable, but definitely grizzlies. Yeah, don't want anything to do with them. That's for sure. The most dangerous thing out there are people in rental RVs, though. I'm more afraid of people than I am of the animals. I would probably run a bear bell next time, just to maybe make more noise and not have the whistle in my mouth. But yeah. The worst was the rental RVs coming through the park there in Wyoming at the Tetons, because they're looking at the bears and all the other stuff. They're not looking at you, and there's no shoulder, and so that was the sketchiest of anything, was just getting through there.
So along those lines, you had mentioned also earlier the difference between the Great Divide mountain bike route, GDBMR, I assume, and the Tour Divide route. Is that particular feature that you talk about there through the park? Is that part of both, or is that something that's Tour Divide and not GDBMR?
I think it's both. I'm pretty sure. It's a really short segment. You come out of Idaho, you cut across right below Yellowstone, come in the back of Teton to Flag Ranch, and then you get on the main access road, and you ride out of one of the big entrances for Tetons. I think that's there for everybody, and it's a shared part of the route. Also, I think Tabor goes through there. It's a major way through. We actually met some Tabor riders when we were there.
Also, kind of along those lines, because this is something I hadn't even thought about before. I realized there was a difference between Tour Divide and GDBMR. Mm-hmm. A, who determines that where it's different, and B, why?
So the major differences are, I think, just to make it a better race, or make it doable quickly. So like the year I did it, certainly wasn't quicker, but the year I did it, there were some bridges out in 17, and so they sent us up Cocoa Claims, which is up and over. It was a hike a bike for hours, but rather than doing the long way around, down here in New Mexico, you take a road alternate instead of dirt, because if it rains on that section of dirt, it turns into impassable peanut butter, and it's terrible, and you could get stuck out there. But then there's also not any water out there, so if you get stuck, you can get into some real trouble. So you can do the 140 miles on road, pretty quick, and not have as many problems and chances for trouble. And then farther south, the other one I can think of right off is when you come out of Grants, you're on pavement for a while. When you go through the Malpai, through the lava fields, I've ridden both sides of it. It's a nice ride on the dirt. It's a little longer, a little harder. So I don't know the reasoning for that one. I do know a couple years ago, there was an effort to do all the dirt sections and do all the hard stuff. So they did the dirt section from from Cuba to Grants, and they did the dirt section from Grants to Pytown. And it worked for some, and didn't work for others. I think they ended up rerouting part of it because we had monsoons kick in a little early, and then the peanut butter mud showed up. And as far as who comes up with it, it's there's a group of guys I think that are looking at it now, but it's ultimately Matt Lee that comes up with the course and the unofficial everything. The ACA is meant more for the GDMBR. Their route is meant for just the tourer folks, so it hits the major towns and has a little bit more resupply, fewer out in the middle of nowhere options.
Matt Lee is the official, unofficial.
Yeah, very unofficial. Yeah, organizer. Yeah. There's a few other guys that have stepped in to help with it in recent years. I can't remember any of the names off the top of my head, but they were the ones that kind of put the effort in to get some of the alternates back in the last few years. Part of that was because the border was closed and they were looking for more distance. And but then you've also got reroutes to deal with because of forest closures and things like that. So there's lots of options they have to look at.
And then there's been fires and flooding and everything else. There's always contingencies and all that.
Right.
There was fires the year you did it.
Yeah. The year I did it, we had one fire reroute, and then we rode through the middle of another fire. So you kind of get word on the trail, and now via social media that things are up. Things are changing. So there was a fire in northern New Mexico, and so when we got to Poltoro, there at the lodge, they were all nice enough to basically give us the information. Here's the new route you need to follow. Here's a printout of the information, that type of thing. And so we had to detour around, get out on the highway, and come back. And it worked out fine because there was Trace Piedras in the middle of it, and so we had actually a nice stop to get some breakfast. But then there was another fire in the Gila that I don't think they ever rerouted it, but probably should have. But wake up one morning and you look out in the distance, and you're like, oh, that looks like fog, and then you get a little closer and you're like, oh no, that's not fog, that's a forest fire. And so we ended up riding through the middle of it, and you just kind of tighten up your bandana and go for it. Didn't really have an option. Didn't have any other direction, and the firefighters we ran into didn't say anything, so it wasn't closed, I guess, but probably shouldn't have been in there. But a few years ago, there were multiple big fires, and then here they will close entire forests if it's too dry. And so they had closed Carson and Santa Fe, and so there was a year where there was a lot of road, basically from Colorado, from the border, halfway through New Mexico, they were on highway.
So it's a little unclear to me, and so if you're interested in doing the Tour Divide, how do you stay up to date on information? Because like when you go to their website, it looks like it hasn't been updated since 2014. Now I know that's not the case, but how does that community work?
It's intentionally nebulous, I think. There's an unofficial sign-up roster that's out there, but really after the winter solstice, you have to send a letter of intent. It goes to Matt, I believe, and at some point close to race start, about middle of May, I think, you'll get a link to sign up for track leaders, and you have to sign the agreement, that the waiver and all that other stuff, and you get on track leaders. That's really it as far as the official, unofficial. The route comes out a few weeks before the race. You can use the previous years as a rough guide, but it's subject to change even right up before, depending on fires and necessary reroutes for things. The community-wise, there's multiple forums, bikepacking.net. There's the multiple Facebook groups. There's a couple race Facebook groups. There's a couple GDMBR groups. The main race group has a pinned post that has pretty much everything you need to know as far as details of things. But it's a lot of you've got to do your research. You've got to go out there and you've got to study the map. You've got to know where things are. You've got to have all your stuff together. And people are helpful to a point, more so on the GDMBR page than the race page. But it's you'll get folks on there that they're going for it first time. They've never done anything like that before, and they're asking a ton of questions. And then you've got the people on there that are comparing notes. I heard this bridge was out on this road. Does anyone know? There's people talking about snow reports right now because there's been tons of snow still coming down. And so it's kind of all over the place with the levels of information and the helpfulness. But really, it's up to each participant to figure it out. You've got to go do your research. You've got to find all your information. Study the maps. You can go buy the ACA maps. They have giant paper maps, which are very detailed. They've got an app now, which is actually really nice. But yeah, do as much research as you can ahead of time to be ready for when the real thing comes out, and then you can, go over it all again. Yeah, you can't lay down, okay, my first 5 days I'm going to do this, because the route could change, 2 weeks before you get there.
There's plenty of beta out there. I mean, there's so much information to pour through and maps and everything else, but much like you said in the beginning, I mean, I don't know from experience, but I do know from doing other events that, you go out there and you feel like you're very prepared, and then you get in the middle of it and you're like, man, I didn't think about this and I didn't think about that and all this. And then once you get through it, you have so much more firsthand information that it kind of outweighs all the beta that you had.
It's very different from some of the other events where ahead of time, this is the route. And unless there's going to be some major bridge out or whatever, this is where we're going, right? So yeah. It's right up to the end before you get the official route. And so you've got to be comfortable with that unknown. You've got to be comfortable changing plans in the middle of the race, because there's a reroute. You've got to know how to work your computer. You got to know how to read the maps and know what's going on.
Yeah. Did you get lost?
No, never got lost, never got off course. Accidentally would go off course to get supplies and then come back, which is allowed if you come back to the same spot.
Right.
And so, you get into town and you would do that. I don't want to go to that. There's a really awesome store 2 blocks that way or whatever. Or like I talked about going to Sealy Lake, that's off course. You leave the course, go to Sealy Lake, come back the exact same way to the exact same point, and then get back on course.
Right.
But no, never got lost. Out in the basin in Wyoming, there's some parts where there's no trail, there's nothing. You're just following a line on your map. Maybe at one point there was some double track there, but it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't too bad. But I was comfortable with my maps and my course, and had been using all of that stuff for years, and knew whenever I saw that line on there that that's really what it meant.
What computer did you run when you did it, and what computer are you running now?
At that point, this is part of what I would change. I had an eTrex just running the route, because it doesn't care about anything else. It's just a route on the map, and it's not giving you suggestions or telling you all this other awesome stuff. It's just a route.
Right.
And then I had an Edge. I don't remember what number it was at that point, if it was 1,000 or I think it was 1,000. As was my backup map. But but then it also had all my metrics and all my junk on it. And now I just run an Edge. I just switched over to a 1040 solar. My 1030 finally died. Got to where I was having to recharge it on rides, so it was time. So now I just run the 1040 solar. Everything's on there. If I was going to do something super long, I may throw my the old one in the bag as a backup, because they do die. I've wrecked and shattered screens on Garmin's before. So it's good to have a backup that's not your phone. A phone is not a GPS navigation device for these races. So yeah, it really varies. People get away with using, whatever they're comfortable with, but no matter what it is, be comfortable with it. Don't get it the day before and then be asking people how to load the course when you're at the start line, and how do I make this talk to my phone and get the course? It's a little late.
So you said you had all your metrics on there. What metrics are you really worried about? You're not running a heart rate monitor or a power meter, are you?
No, not for tour. I didn't run. I just had speed. I had cadence, but it didn't really matter. It was just on there, and I didn't feel like taking it off. But it's really just speed and distance and elevation, calories burned, estimates, stuff like that, which is wildly inaccurate. But I didn't run the heart rate monitor because I didn't want the added complication or the irritation. You haven't had a shower in a week, and you're wearing this thing strapped to your chest. You got rashes and stuff. So I'll wear it for the shorter ones. But you can tell if you when you're going too hard, and if you pay attention to what's going on, then you should back off, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never run a power meter. Really just wanted the comfort of the numbers and distance, and this was where I am, and this is what's going on.
So I've got a couple of different questions before Kevin steals all my questions again, because every question he's asked, I literally was headed that direction. So I wanted to ask you, I can only imagine through videos and pictures and everything, the atmosphere and the just excitement that's at the beginning of the race. That whole, gathering, everybody like-minded and, having fun, and the just sheer excitement of, okay, we're having beers now, but we're going to get out on this course tomorrow, and I may or may not see you for the next couple of weeks, And then also what was the pre-race meeting like? Is there any unofficial, official start, or does everybody just show up and somebody says it's 8 o'clock or whatever, 6 a.m.? There's no spinistry arrows out on course. So, what does all that look like, and what does that feel like? And then the finish, equally exciting, but way less ceremonial.
Yeah, so got there a few days early just to get in and get settled and calm down, and just check things out, go out and, you got to get your bike put back together, make sure everything works, go do system checks, all those things. And so I stayed at the Y there. It's at the official start. And it's just, aside from the people who are there, it's just everybody else doing the same thing, bike boxes and people walking around, getting ready and talking. So it's cool just to meet people. And, that year I met Kerry from K-Lite. He was there, and talked to him, and you see other people that you've seen on YouTube and wherever. And so that was fun. I knew I had one person, Kevin Companion was there, so I had one person there that I actually knew, and so we kind of hung out and got ate together and stuff like that. The night before, there's a pizza party get together thing, or at least there was the year I did it. Not minimal information. It's more just get out and drink and eat and have fun type of thing. the morning of the start, it's a late start for these things. It's not a 5 a.m. I think it was 9. Everybody gathers up in front of the hotel there, and we do, big group picture, and then Crazy Larry, one of the local guys, does a big rah-rah speech, and that's kind of it. And you roll out. There's nothing official. There's no riders meeting. There's no details. There's just there's lots of people trying to get, last minute course updates and things on their computers and stuff like that. But there's no one there from the race. There's no one there from track leaders. There's none of that to be had. It's very on your own. You don't have to go to the thing the night before. You're on your own. Throughout the race, it thinned out pretty quickly. First day, there were a lot of people all over the place because you got 200 people all heading down the same path. But
Sure.
by the second day, I was out there by myself. You've got the same group of 10 people that you see every other day, because you're leapfrogging people in town, or they're sleeping, you're not. There were maybe 5 guys that I saw very regularly, and I finished around. We were the same pace, and that kind of shuffles out within the first week, and you meet people, and you know who you want to ride with and hang out with, or who you don't want to hang out with and have lunch with, those types of things. But yeah, towards the end, it gets fewer and fewer. It gets more and more spread out. There was a guy from Italy that I basically was back and forth with for the last 2 weeks. He was on single speed and I was gears, and so I'd pass him on the fast parts, and he'd chug past me on other things. But we finished pretty close.
Wasn't Campagna single speed?
I honestly don't remember if he was or not. We were only together the one day. He had to bail. He had trouble with his foot, and so he stopped in Helena. But yeah, the single speed guys, yeah, they having done single speed before that, it's you can get past them on the wide open fast stuff, right? 'Cause you got more gears, you can roll faster, they're spun out, but then they come chugging by you on some of the climbs, and so it's back and forth. But yeah, the end, there's nothing at the end. It's just the border station and a soda machine, and hopefully someone to pick you up, unless you're riding back. But it's 60 miles straight south to the border, flat highway, cars whizzing by both ways. You get there and there's a fence and a big sign. That's it. There's no there's no crowd, there's no timing, there's just your person picking you up, and you're done, and that's it. Which is how most of these things are. All right, you get to the ends, you take a picture at whatever the end point is, whatever monument or fence or wall or whatever it might be, and you're done. And track leaders or whatever says you're done, and you're done. There's no, you don't get your participation medal and your shirt and all that other stuff. There's nothing. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I think people don't, you see a lot of questions about that, is what do I do when I get to the end? Well, you got to figure that out. There are services down there that will pick you up and take you back to their place, take you to El Paso, take you to Tucson. Some people just ride back, they ride back up north to the highway, then ride over to El Paso, but you got to get yourself out of there. It's not like the start where there's the whole city.
Yeah, and there's no facilities there, right?
A bathroom and a soda machine. Yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah.
When you say services, what does that mean?
Jeffrey Sharp's one I can think of. I can't remember the name, but he does shuttle services. So he's got a little. I think it's he's out of Hachita. So he'll come and pick you up at the border and take you back to his place, and you can get cleaned up and spend the night. And then he'll run you over to El Paso. I don't know if he goes to Tucson or not, but then he does the reverse too. If you're starting down there, he'll come pick you up and get you down there, get you to the start, those types of things. So there's a few different. I think there's a couple other people that do that too. You have similar things for like Arizona Trail because the endpoints are in the middle of nowhere, and so there are people that help that process.
So I had one more question for you. Well, actually I have two questions, but how often do you reflect on that event in particular? Is it still like top of your mind today? And, I'm sure you learned a lot, and do you draw on a lot of that stuff, good and bad? Or do you rarely think about it these days?
It's not every day, but it's multiple times a week. Certainly anytime I'm doing getting ready for any events or doing any other race, it's always there. I mean, early on, that's all you talk about. That's all you think about for weeks. I'm sure everyone got tired of hearing me, and it tapers off after a while. But it's there constantly. I have dreams about it all the time.
That's cool. That's very cool.
It's usually I'm on course and something's gone horribly wrong. I'm missing a critical component to something, or my computer's lost, or someone stole my bike. But it's always on that route, right? So it's there. It doesn't go away.
Well, and then my last question, I wanted to know more. I didn't understand what the next event is. You said you're going to do Pines.
Oh,
what?
Pinions and Pines. It's out of Flagstaff. I think this is the 5th year. I did it 2 years ago. So the course changes every year. It's shorter, and people laugh when I say, "Oh, it's a short race. It's only 400 miles," and they're like, "You're crazy." So yeah, the year I did it, it was the first time it was 300, but he changed. Dana Ernst is the guy that puts it on, and then Dylan's helping him this year. It changes every year based on closures and conditions, and just making it a better course. And so it started out super, super hard, and only a couple people finished. And then each year that's
the way we like it.
Right. Each year it's evolved, and I think the year I did it, there was maybe a 50% finish rate. So this year he's added on a 500-mile option. So there's a 300-ish and a 500-ish. I think we're at 530 now as a distance. But it's coming up.
Is it all gravel?
It's everything. It's I was telling Kevin before we got going, most of what I do now, it's multimedia, so you're on every possible surface. So most people will use a hardtail front suspension bike, XC bike, Fargo, Achumba. It's something that's, hardtail can carry a lot of bags, but you've got a front fork to take the edge off. There'll be guys on drop bar bikes, but it's not a skinny tire thing at all. It's you're running 2 3s, 2 4s, whatever you can cram in there. But it's everything. It's forest road, it's trail, it's pavement, it's arroyos, it's
what
everything.
Are you riding?
I'm on my old Niner still. So it's a Niner Air 9. It's what I used for the 2015 Rat, same bike.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So it hasn't collapsed on me yet. It's still working. It's been rebuilt a few times, but yeah, still rolling on that. Just have a standard, Fox 32 on the front to take off the edge of stuff, because I think there's about 130 miles of single track on this one. So I could do it on my Cutthroat, but I would not have as good of a time. And I would,
no, I wouldn't think so.
I'm way faster on forest roads and pavement on the Cutthroat, but I'm not so great on technical single track. I can do it, but it's not fun. I'd rather be on an actual mountain bike.
Well, surprisingly, we hadn't really talked about hardware a whole lot so far on Tour Divide, which is actually quite fascinating that we hadn't gotten here yet. I have a couple quick questions. One, you talked about the charging the electronics. So, do you have a Dynamo hub, or what's your charging / recharging setup for Tour Divide specifically?
For that one, I used a K-Lite system. At the time, it was the Bike Packer version 2. So it's a SON front hub. Then it goes into the had a control box, but it basically it's SON front hub goes into the K-Lite system, which has a USB converter. That goes into a cache battery that has pass through, so it can charge and output at the same point. And that battery acts as a buffer, because as you're pedaling, your speed's up and down, the output's all over the place for the USB. The Garmin's in particular get really annoyed when the power's on off all the time. So you use the cache battery as a pass through, and it buffers, so it's giving a constant output to whatever device it is, to your Garmin, to your phone, and they're happy. The battery's getting charged, from the device as the speed allows. So you run during the day, lights are off, you're charging your battery, you're charging your Garmin, whatever it may be. When you need your light, flip the switch, it switches over to just light, and then you're running, everything else off battery power. I use the E-Trex because it takes triple A's. Anyway, it takes batteries. They're replaceable. It'll run plugged into a USB if you want to. So I had it plugged in most of the time, and then the batteries were for at night. I think I changed the batteries once. It was one of those comfort things, really. Now I just use the USB charge for everything, and it's not a big deal. But that was the basics of it. I had another battery, a second battery, as just a spare that was in the bag, because I've had cache batteries fail. And then you're stuck, right? You don't have any way to recharge until you get to town. And then when you're in town, if you actually get a hotel, you've got a wall wart plug-in just so you can top everything off. Phone stays turned off during the day, or at least on airplane mode, so it's not killing the battery, searching for signal out in the middle of nowhere. And then what else is electric? For tour, Spot runs forever on lithium triple A's. I think I changed the batteries once on that too. And it will run plugged into USB as well. Now the new ones, new setup is the same. It's just new versions of everything. So it's the latest version of the K-Lite. I've got a hardwired rear flasher, a K-Lite Cube. So it runs 24/7, and it's plugged into the cache battery. It doesn't take anything. So you don't ever have to worry about that again. You just plug it in and it goes. And it's super bright.
What's that called?
The K-Lite, it's a Cube. He's got front and rear
Cube.
flashers. Yeah. So it runs off USB power. You have to have it has such a low draw that you have to have a battery that will not auto shut off. It's a good one. It does really well. But you've got to have somewhere to stash the battery if you don't have bags. I never take the bags off my Cutthroat, and I ran all winter without even looking at the cache battery. I basically just, you start to ride, you plug it in, you ride. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. What cache battery are you running, by the way, and how many milliamps?
I don't remember. I use RAV Power and Anchor for my backups. I'd have to go look up the other one that I've got plugged into this system. It's the one they recommend on some of the K-Lite store sites. Starts with V, but it's a square. It's a little bigger than I would like, but it will run that Cube forever, and it never shuts off. And it's got two outputs, so you can run something else out.
Let's go a little bit more big picture on the hardware side of things. What is the bike platform of choice for all the cool kids at the Tour Divide these days? Is this a drop bar cutthroat Fargo environment? Is this a full suspension mountain bike? What are the cool kids doing in 2023 on it?
Yeah, the joke is you could ride anything on it, but you'd have a bad time. I think someone asked about using a Brompton on it on the page the other day. Someone's like, well, sure, but you'll hate yourself. I used the Cutthroat. It was Gen 1. It had only, it was brand new at the time. I'd say a quarter of the people were on them at that point. It's pretty popular. The whole all-terrain bike thing was just starting then. And so really anything like that. You want big tires. I ran 235s. I was around a guy that was on a cross bike with cross tires, and he had a miserable time. And stopped at the first bike shop and crammed the biggest tires he could on there, and they were still too small. So you want something that's comfortable, lots of hand position. So that's why a lot of people go with a drop bar bike. I kind of go back and forth depending on what I'm doing. I'm using hardtail with a straight bar for pinions. I'm going to use a drop bar for, races later. It really depends on the terrain, but you've got to have lots of hand positions. People will use aero bars. Totally not for aero. It's just somewhere to rest. You lay down on it, take the pressure off your hands and off your arms.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you've got to be comfortable in those so you're not wobbling all over the place and wrecking, but you just need options, and it needs to be fitted properly and comfortable. And you don't want to go into it knowing that you've got a hot spot after 50 miles, or you get some saddle irritation or whatever. You got to have all that stuff dialed out well in advance. I think a lot of people still run the Cutthroat type bikes, but you'll see a lot of XC bikes too, hardtail XC bikes, or titanium, carbon, whatever it may be, but put a little bit of fork on the front to take the edge off. You totally don't need a suspension fork for tour. There's only a couple of spots that are single track, and they're not gnarly at all. But it sure would be nice on some of the washboard to take the edge off. I had one, I can't remember where it was early on, going too fast, washboard, and it actually blew my front bag off. And the roll came apart, and it came off the bike just from bouncing so much. And so kind of slowed down a little bit at that point. But yeah. But yeah, as far as drivetrain, it's all over the place. It's really your whatever you prefer. You've got single speed guys, you've got pinion gearbox. At the time I ran a 1x11. I'm switching the bike over actually to a 1x12 now, just to get a little bit more climb out of it. Just whatever you're comfortable with and what you ride all the time. Whatever it is, ride it beforehand. Be comfortable with it.
For sure. So since you have your I don't know, your nose in all of that realm more than I do, what's the acceptance of wireless shifting on multi-day events? Is that something that's being embraced or totally shunned because of the failure possibility?
It's totally full use. I've got it on bike I'm using for pinions. It's been on there for, I guess I've had it on that bike for a year. It's a GX Axis. Just had a derailleur, needed to replace the derailleur, and that's what I went with. It's been great, no problems. I've used it in a couple events already. I always carry an extra battery in my bag anyway, just in case. And for the event, you throw the charger's tiny. I've already got a full electrical system on the bike anyway, so it's just another USB thing to charge. It's one more thing to worry about, but I've not had any problems with it. I'm switching my cutthroat over from 1x to Axis as well, mainly because I can finally do a proper mullet setup. You've got the drops in front, right? But I wanted different brakes, and I wanted that 12th climbing gear. So things get a little steep out here, in the mountains, and so it's fine unloaded, but once you're loaded up, it's nice to have that bailout gear. And so I'll switch over to mountain bike back end and drop bar, brifters in the front.
You had touched on a good bit of hike-a-bike on the Colorado Trail and Tour Divide both. What's your preferred pedal shoe combination if you throw that much hiking in the mix?
Yeah, I run Shimano, either XT or XTR on everything. If I know there's gonna be a lot of hike-a-bike, I'll run a little more flexy shoe with a good tread on it. Right now I'm using Recon 2s. I tried to go up to the 3, and it was a little too stiff. It pedals great, but once you start trying to walk up some rocks, it's not so great. But yeah, for tour, at the time, I can't remember what it was called, but it was the equivalent of the Recon 2s. It's a walkable shoe with kind of like a hiking tread bottom on it. Carbon sole gravel race shoes not going to work. Your feet are going to be killing you. You're going to be slipping on rocks. You've got to have rubbery tread on the bottom.
Was that your only shoe for the tour, or did you have some sort of camp shoe or something like that as well?
For tour itself, I just had the shoes, and that was it. And because you walk around in town in them, or camp, you're not really in camp hanging out. You stop, you set up, you collapse, and you get up and you go. But if you got a room and you can do some laundry or something, you can just walk around in your bike shoes. I have carried flip-flops and stuff in the past for a couple of these things. If I'm just going out and having fun, then I'll take some camp shoes, throw some tennis shoes or something in a bag. But yeah, it's definitely something walkable. And again, don't just like any race, don't pick up all the new stuff the day before the race, right? So have your shoes worn in and working. Have your cleats on tight. Spare cleat in the bag.
Well, we're rolling up on the end of Tim's appointment time. Brad, if you have anything else you want to be sure to get covered, please do throw it in the mix here.
No, I think I'm good. I think you covered all my questions, Kevin. Good luck to you, Tim, and it was nice talking to you, man. It's so good to hear from you. It's so good to vicariously, get to see, I still see all your stuff on Strava, and I get excited every time. I'm stoked for you, man.
Oh, thank you.
And tell your lovely lady I said hello.
Will do.
And maybe I'll see you soon.
Yeah, I'm hoping to catch you guys at some point up in Colorado. Maybe a couple times. We'll see how things shake out.
We would love to see y'all. Definitely tell Zoe hello from me as well, and look forward to seeing more on both of y'all's adventures. I really do hope we get to cross paths in the coming months. And just go ahead and exit out, Tim, and when it goes to that next page, just make sure you're 100% uploaded before you cancel out that second page. Thank you, my friend. It was fantastic chatting with you, and look forward to hanging around the campfire with you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.